Thank you, Ina. Thank you. It's a privilege to be a voice at Voices. You will not see dresses from me or any other form of fashion. I will just zoom out and talk about a big picture. I'm looking around the room here, and I'll make a bet based on your color of hair, the grayness, the wrinkles in your skin, and so on, that none of you is old enough to have been in a moment like this. A moment in which we do an era shift, and one that's not a casual one, but the one that also has to do with geopolitics and supply chain issues. I was 6 years old when that happened, and I was roller skating on the highways of the Netherlands, as my parents were not allowed to drive on Sundays to conserve oil. This was 1972. This is the last time that the world shifted in a new era, while we were also short all kinds of materials. And geopolitics is much less about religion or form of government. Geopolitics is about safety, militarily and bodily safety, as well as stuff. If every city in the world would have had enough stuff, we would just be fighting over soccer, basketball, or something like that. But since we're short in one place and the other, we need to ship stuff around, and that's why we're fighting. And all the fights that are happening right now could also be interpreted through that lens. Does any one of you still remember your holiday? Was it good? A long time ago, eh? But I just want to remind you that something that is called the fear index, which measures how much fear is priced in August moved to about 60. As big as COVID, as big as the financial crisis. What happened in August? Well, in August, basically, Japan moved the interest rate by 0.15%. And that scared everyone. And then Japan stopped it, and the scare went away. But in a shift to a new era, wild things are happening. Here's a history of eras that we think is probably true since the Second World War. There was a post-war boom, which is decolonizing, there was engineering, we started to get suburban life, we had great amounts of energy, and the economics were good. It was one of rebuilding. Then we had the era of contention, which started in the 70s with the oil crisis. And basically, we got Cold War peaks and everything else that we feel now in geopolitics. We actually had the time of consumer electronics, and basically the trends were different, and we had oil crisis, and actually money was no longer cheap. And then we had the period, the era of markets, even the global markets, that you probably all have lived through as leaders or students or whatever walk of life you've been at in that period, which is good. We collaborate. China makes everything cheap, Asia makes everything cheap, so no inflation. We are basically connecting digitally. We are actually starting to stabilize demographics, all good. You know, we actually have enough energy. We start to get concerned about the climate, and we had cheap money. Does anyone want to guess which one of these five is still true? None. At least that's if you believe the press. I would say there's something still true, and I hope to convince you of that. This is the roller coaster of the 70s. So you see on the left, you know, the 70s. We're sort of in 76 now. The inflation has come down one time. But there was another one, because we didn't fix the supply. It took us till 85 to pump enough oil and gas at that time to actually get back control over the price as we shifted from a 50% OPEC dependency to a 30% OPEC dependency. Today, in many products, we are 80% dependent of certain countries, whether it be a country in Africa, be it Chile, be it China, and so on. These dependencies stimulate geopolitics. We will have to fix supply to the world. There is enough, but we need to build it so that we can make what people need. This is where politicians are now proud. You know, we got inflation under control. You know, it's back down. Lots of definition in inflation. The ones that get picked are the lowest. But the reality is, the consumers feel the pain of the cumulative inflation, the surface underneath this mountain. The cumulative inflation for an average Western country is 20%. Only China was at 6%, which means that the average consumer got 20% poorer. And until they get their money back, they will be angry. You can't just say inflation is 3%, it's fine. No, they lost 20%. And if you live at the bottom 40%, that is more like 35% because essential goods are more important to you. So we have to think about how to make stuff affordable if you want to be able to satisfy customers that basically got poorer. China is calming down a little bit. Although, as people say, China might only go 2 or 3%. I just want to say 2 to 3% growth, even if they don't hit their 4 to 5, is still more growth than the rest of Asia combined. So don't forget it. It's a big market, and there's of course all kinds of tension. I'm going to guess this is probably the most unexpected slide that you see. On the right-hand side, I have a microscope, and on the left-hand side, a telescope. And it's a bit about the CEO agenda. And something has happened. I've talked to about 500 CEOs every year. And what has really happened is that the agenda has completely changed. Usually, you were a fashion company, you had fashion issues, a bank with bank issues, a beer company with beer issues. And you had one more global issue. So you added global warming or circularity or COVID or Ukraine as one more issue that you had to think about that we were all thinking about. This year, for example, in Davos, people make lists of issues. Do I have all the geopolitical issues? Do I have all the supply chain conflicts? Do I have the interest rate implications, the shortages in labor? Do I understand AI? And the CEOs, besides their short list of own issues, had 30 issues. And I notice it when I talk to people in general, not just CEOs, they're shifting their mind from what just happened to interpret one of the 30 issues. That's a characteristic of when you enter a new era. Because in a new era, everything is changing a little bit, and you try to figure out what's right and what's wrong and where we're heading. But as we get tired in the microscope, I would say, because it's a long list and some really complicated and painful things, we forget the telescope. In the telescope, I will contend the future is bright. And by the way, billions and trillions worth of money are invested in that bright future. There is enough stuff in the ground to satisfy 20 billion, we're not going to have 20 billion people, but 20 billion people at the wealth of, let's say, Amsterdam. We just need to dig it up. It's hard work, takes time, but there's enough stuff. That's not the planetary boundary. AI, let's imagine it in a different way than the software in your phone, but imagine it as a humanoid robot behind every person, one. It's entirely possible. They will cost 20 to 30K. They will have roughly your brain as intelligence, at least. And basically, that would double, triple, quadruple our output per person, which means that the 4.8 billion people that are poor in the world actually could live like the people in Amsterdam. Then you might have say energy, climate. We will solve energy and climate because we actually need to. At the moment, energy has become a security issue, more almost than a climate issue, although it's, of course, both. But basically, AI is security. AI eats energy. And you start to see people doing things that we couldn't discuss for 10 years. So many tech players have basically bought into nuclear, from buying 3 Mile Island to other things, which is a very different narrative about what we're going to do. So that means that we will have enough energy. It'll take time, and the transition is painful, but we will have enough energy, don't worry. If you just think the sun, we only use 0.1% of what the sun sends us. We just need to ratchet it up a little bit, and we're fine. In the meantime, we'll do nuclear, we'll do other things. In the short term, we'll still do fossil fuels. We'll have enough energy. And then the advances in science are just enormous. I have synthesized it in the following way as a little stories. I believe my daughter, age 15, has about an 80% chance to make it to 120, and a 1/3 chance to make it to 150. And that's before AI started thinking about it. So the last one, the 150, is speculative, but the 120 could actually be in the money. And we can debate 110, but basically the progress in science is going to be enormous, and AI hasn't been thinking yet. So we should not forget, as we get tired in the microscope, that the telescope is just going to be great. And I think that one of the most undertold stories is the human potential. And as a result, we come into limit mindsets of where the world could be going instead of doing impossible things. You all saw the rocket landing and being grabbed. I won't call the name because he's political at the moment, but Elon. I got a course when I was young, a mechanical engineer, that it was impossible to land the rocket. It was just too unstable to take something that comes down at twice the speed of sound, break it, put the fire under, and then hold it. Impossible. Technically, will never be possible. It happened. It happened. And many more things happened in that same way with robot taxis and so on. So I don't know whether you saw that. How was your week? But it was the 6 things that were launched in the Elon's universe, from robot taxis to the humanoid robots tapping beer and all that kind of stuff. The innovation potential of the world is enormous. But we have to deal with some of these short-term issues too. So when you would read the world about globalization, we basically have said we'll end globalization. This page summarizes a 300-page report in one page. And basically, red means you're dependent, blue is you're free. Okay, you look down the columns. Not a single region is independent. No region will be an island. We will not deglobalize because then the world will not work. We might go more regional, we might go more bilateral, and I actually think this is good news. Because if you're dependent, you shoot much less than if you're independent. So this actually is a peacemaker. Because you will consider 3 times to shoot at somebody that is actually bringing your essential energy or your essential materials. So no region is going to be an island. So while this is shifting, the world is not going to go local. It cannot. AI is big. I like this one, but there's a million ways that you could think about AI. This is the progression from GPT to GPT-4 with vision, on which exams they can make. GPT next year will be able to do all the exams at PhD level. Just get ready. Yeah? So just think about it. Just get ready. It might have, I think, it felt very fast and then very slow, but it is very fast. I just want to add it. So, just think about it. Agents will basically do your PhD. That'd be good. It's democratizing PhDs. I actually like it. Energy is very important. Yeah, we already had energy issues before AI said I'm hungry for energy, but we did something in the last 20 years, which was we grew the energy investments by 7.7% until 2014, and then we said let's not do it. How did we do that? We reduced growth in renewables, and we reduced growth in oil and gas. Actually, we went negative on the investment levels in oil and gas, as you see the black line coming down. To maintain energy balance, that 0.5% should be north of 10%. We need to have catch-up investment in energy. Energy makes the world go round. More energy is good because it will bring food, product, and everything to society. We'll have to make it clean. But we need to be careful that we don't make it impossible for people to deal with. I believe the energy transition will be reframed into a quadrilemma. And it's already happening. Now, I've been talking about this for more than a decade, but you basically were in a frame transition at any cost. And then we learned, that's maybe the only good lesson from the Ukraine event, when Ukraine basically made it expensive to have energy, unreliable to have energy, we basically, let's call it punched in the face and learned that you cannot make energy so expensive because the people at the bottom actually don't survive properly. In my country, in the Netherlands, if the energy gets expensive, the bottom of the Netherlands starts food optimizing. That's how the richest country is still poor. So we have to do this transition in an affordable way. Second thing is you can't just do an energy transition where you can't count on energy. So that's why the new data centers, they actually require to be put in a place where energy is secure, because they can't shut down. And wind and solar are not always secure, so you can't only bet on that card. We will have to do something richer. And then for Europe, it's important that, when the US did the IRA, the US can get the title wrong and the policy right. That might be IRA, because of course it was not inflation reducing. It can get the title right and the policy wrong. But both I've not seen before that they would actually get both right. But basically, the IRA was hitting us in the competitiveness, and it has hurt us. Because basically, the regulation in Europe is a mandate to do something, while in the US, it's a subsidy to do something, to get innovation. So you get a carrot for innovation and a mandate that leads to cost. It's wrong. As a result, Europe has problems with its competitiveness that Draghi, in his report, has laid. We invest half the R&D. We invest much less in CapEx. Our companies are smaller, more fragmented, and so on. And Draghi rightfully said we need radical, radical, radical change. If the other people don't play by the rules, we can't be playing by the rules. Europe is relatively a little handicapped on the dependency. If you're a little handicapped, you can't be more papal than the Pope, or more Catholic than the Pope. I don't know what that expression is. And I just want to take 2 more lenses, and then I will round off what I think this era is going to be. If you look at the demographics, one way to look at it is, where are the babies coming from? Well, India, yes. China, even though with the one-child policy, and you see Nigeria. But of course, if you add up Africa, and particularly sub-Saharan, that's where they come from. But in this context, I want to warn you for something that we don't talk enough about. We've been talking about aging for decades, but in the wrong way. We looked on the right-hand side, which is we're getting older. That's fine if we get healthier. The fertility rate dropping below replacement rate will be the problem of the next century. The problem is it takes time until it hits you, but it's not stable for a society to be at 1.4. The panic in Korea, where it's now 0.7, is complete. And so we will have to actually figure out that we tell a positive story in which our children actually would want to have children. And part of their story, why they don't take them, is because we don't tell the story of the telescope. And if I look back in 50 years, I would hope that the name of the next era would include these 4 things. We still have markets, we still have cross-border flows, we collaborate, we probably are we are geopolitical and political, we're automated, but the most important thing is we have enough stuff, lots of things that we can do with robots and energy and longevity. We will go for abundance. It's time for a positive story of the future. Thank you.